of the picture there doesn't look so much like the commercial capital of Nigeria, right? But a whole lot of people still flock to Lagos. I guess that's putting a strain on infrastructure, and we see the population trying to create space for themselves, which is what Lagos state government is checking at this time. Now, in 2023, numbers from the World Bank shows that about 45% of Nigeria's population lived in the rural areas. While this is a decrease from what we had in 2022, 2022 about 46.5%. Most Nigerians, of course, we know the food come from the rural areas. We have more poverty there, and so we see the migration to the urban putting pressure on the infrastructure in those urban areas. Top on the list, Lagos, and then the federal capital, Abuja, and all of that. What's the need to balance this population? That's what Daisy Omokunge is speaking with us. Daisy Omokunge is the executive director of PROMAD and joins us from Bradford. Good morning, and thank you so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Good morning, Nigeria. My pleasure to be on the show this morning.
So we talk about inclusive development as a way of having sustainable development, but what are the pros and cons of the imbalance in population between rural and urban areas of a country?
Pardon?
I was asking the pros and cons of having imbalance between the rural and urban population or residents.
Yeah, so the imbalance in between the rural and urban centers in Nigeria, or urban cities and towns in Nigeria, is as a result of so many things. You could talk about economic opportunities. You could talk about infrastructures. You could talk about availability of healthcare services, and you've rightly mentioned the issue of migration, as well as the issues of availability of technology and innovation services. All of these, when you look at them in depth, it contributes to while we are having the movement from the rural areas to the urban areas. And this is because people naturally will always move to where things appear to be better in terms of opportunities that can be leveraged, and people will move. But in Nigeria, the case is the same, but it is much more because we are having some issues around our governance, the way government design policies, and the ways the 3 tiers of government have been working in Nigeria in the past years. And if not because of the recent pronouncement by the Supreme Court, you see that the closest tiers of government is the local government, very close to the people. But in the last 20 years, the local government has almost been dead and buried in terms of governance and administration. And if that has been happening, it means that little or nothing in terms of bringing policies up, in terms of activities and projects and programs of government that will be able to facilitate infrastructural development, access to health care services, educations in the rural areas have been close to zero, because the arm of government that is closer to them, that's supposed to deliver these services, are almost in a death situation. So, but thanks to the Tinubu-led administration that have approached the Supreme Court of the land to ask that local governments needs to be independent. And we begin to see that the government is working towards that, and the states, by what we have seen, at a reasonable extent, they are cooperating to ensure that this comes to stay. But then there are things, a whole lot of things that needs to follow in terms of ensuring that the local government will not just have access to their funds indirectly, because it's one thing to have these funds available to them. It is another thing to have credible people at this level of governance to be able to drive development agenda and carry the people along, execute projects that really meet the needs of the people, not focusing on frivolities, buying more cars for local legislators or marrying more wives, and all of these issues needs to be dealt with.
So how do you think it should be dealt with? Because I hear you sounding optimistic, like a whole lot of people who have spoken about the year 2025, but you have that if again, that yes, it should begin from the local government, and we seem to have started with the, well, empowerment of the local government council, but how do we manage that empowerment so there's no abuse? What do you think can be put in place for that?
Okay, so the data available so far, for instance, the 32 states of the federation have presented and approved their budget for 2025, and these 32, according to the data program that I've been able to have access to this moment, we have the budget totaling 23 trillion naira. This is not too big, but it is something that, if well implemented across these states and across the local levels, is going to translate to development. So, looking at the empowerment at the local government level, organizations, non-profit organizations, NGOs, CSOs, government at the federal level that have been able to champion this needs to come up with capacity building programs for local government executives, local government legislators, to really understand what they should be doing at the levels of that governance. Because it is one thing, like I said, to have these resources for them, but would they be able to design budgets? In the last few years, we have seen only few local government have budgets that they will be working with on an annual basis. So going forward, we should be having local governments that will be able to design budgets in a way that really listen to the people, collect data, analyze those data to be able to see what the data is saying in terms of what the people needs and where are these needs coming from. How should government focus on that? So we ensure, so that we can ensure that this funding that is the funding that is available can be channeled to real activities that will enhance growth and development. On the other hand, improving agriculture is very important, and that can be linked to the budget that I talked about. And then balance of politics and governance. We have seen in the past where chairman, whether caretaker or elected, only focuses on politics, using the instrument of office to destabilize cities and towns under their leadership. This is not, we should move away from such practices. Going forward, there should be the need of balancing politics and governance. For me, I always advise that there is need to balance politics and governance, because the reason why we elected people into office is for the purpose of governance, administration of our common resources to be able to meet the needs of everyone. That is the reason of governance. But then, performing in office as an elected official or appointed official is not enough. You also need to balance the politics, because if that does not happen, you could see that one performing governor or one performing local government chairman can be removed overnight if the politics is not balanced. So for me, going forward, there is need for us to balance politics and governance at the local level. And this will enhance that we have the political will, and also we have the capacity on the governance side to be able to marry the two and deliver development to the people. On the other side, also, citizens have a great role to play in terms of ensuring that their local government chairman use this direct funding that is coming to them now to actually power development by ensuring that they participate, ask for accountability and transparency in how these funds will be deployed to the activities of local government at their levels.
Yeah, Daisy, I guess that is why we had the structure where the governors were put like directly on top of the local government council. But we saw that system abused in a lot of ways and in a lot of states. So now, if we say we want to keep the local government chairman or councillors in check, I wonder what structure you think we can put in place to ensure that, because as you noted, having the fund is one thing, but using the fund effectively is another. You mentioned the role of the citizens, but sometimes it does seem like even the citizens can get really sentimental and just want to satisfy their personal needs and not look at the bigger picture of the council as a whole.
Okay, so trying to address that. For me, the issues that we need to look at is following the principle of participatory governance. If you look at the design or the creation of local government, it has to do with community activities. And then if we have to really follow that principle, there is need to instill participatory governance approach in our local government system. And when I'm talking about this, is a situation where all stakeholders, not just the politician, all stakeholders will be able to come together on one table and be able to say, look, this is what we are working towards in the next 4 years. And then how do we break down this into different structures, maybe for the next 1 year, for the next 2 years, for the next 3 years, and for the next 4 years. So when we have all of this, and then we're able to set in place what we call the key performance indicators, and then the tracking and monitoring system. And that is where the role of the citizens comes into play in ensuring that everything that has been put into the plan will be monitored and tracked. Not that when the fund comes, the chairman will just do whatever he likes when he brings together the councillors, maybe one of the top few influential community leaders. So we should move away from this. It is only when we work in collectivism that we can advance development at the rural level and be able to provide the essential social services that will drive healthcare, that will drive education, that will drive agricultural innovation and agribusiness, which the rural area is known for. When we were growing up, we saw how local government was central to issues of governance and development. If I tell you now, the primary school where I started from in my local area, then in our village where my father was doing farming, is no longer in operation because people have moved their children from that local community to at least a town where they are sure that they will get better education. So these are the issues that needs to be addressed in terms of how we govern the local government. Yeah. And local government also needs things around building structures and frameworks for governance to work, because the way it is right now, if we continue with that, with the kind of funding that is coming to them, we might not get the needed result that the local government autonomy is supposed to bring to the table.
Yeah, it does sound like, even with the last example that you gave, that this could be beyond the local government. For instance, you talked about schools. We see a lot of scenarios where people move, for instance, to Lagos. Lagos Island is crowded because of the offices around there. You are in the UK, and I know that over there and other Western developed countries, people stay in areas that, I mean, look at Davos, where the world is meeting. It's like our village, you know. So it goes back to the issue of infrastructure. And I wonder how much or how fast that can be done to discourage this rural-urban movement.
Okay, so infrastructures is not what you develop overnight. It must be powered by effective planning, and this planning has to do with first listening to what is on ground, trying to investigate, trying to use data, collect data, and analyze this data. What exactly do we need? So when we get all of that done, then we can move to the phase of the effective planning that I talk about, where this can be driven by budget. So when the budget comes and we are able to get that passed and approved, then how do we implement? So this takes a lot of time, but then what is most important is starting and then being committed to it to ensure that we get the needed results. So in stopping migration, infrastructure is very key. Like I said earlier, people tend to move to where they think that they will have access to better things or basic things of life. So for instance, we have been talking about improving agriculture over the years, but then where are the infrastructures for people or young people to invest in agriculture? How many local governments have one tractor across the country? Just one, let's say one, all around. 774 local governments. How many of them have one functional tractor? And are we expecting young people who have gone to the universities or polytechnic or college of education to come back and be practicing farming the way their father or parent practiced farming? So all of this needs to be taken into consideration. And if we are to stop or reduce migration from rural areas to urban areas, which is very important at this moment because of food inflation, means that people are no longer producing foods in our farms because they are moving. So if we have to reduce that, we need to provide an enabling environment that will ensure or help young people to move into agriculture, even our elderly ones that are there, to scale on their farming practices and be able to drive development, support food security in the country. And you will see, just recently, we have seen the price of how the prices of cocoa is soaring. So what is our government, the local government and the state government doing about this in order to ensure that we produce more cocoa, we generate more jobs, we generate more income for the country, and be able to sustain our development efforts?
All right, we do hope we will see the result of more attention, given to this, especially as you mentioned there, your last point, agriculture, food security is number one on the list. Thank you so much, Executive Director of PROMAD, Daisy Omokungbe, for your time this morning.
I'm grateful. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.
All right, just before we head back to Sunrise Daily Studio, tell you that the market yesterday ended in the red, 0.05%. We lost at 103,000 level for the all share, closed at 102,788. Activity was mostly green, but we had volume in the red, and we saw banking as the only survivor again yesterday. Second trading session that we have, that banking gained 1% because of the figures, obviously, consumer goods, industrial goods, insurance, oil and gas, all ended in the red. We'll see what the market numbers will have at intraday when we will do this again, and then we'll have 55 minutes during Business Incorporated. I'm Ini John Mekwa handing you back to Kela and Markwe, and I'll see you at 1 p.m.